Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylists Podcast. I'm Emma Morton-Turner and you're listening to episode 30, Talking Sustainable Design with Ella Doran. So I was really lucky with this episode to be invited down to the old Bankville on Hackney Road, where Ella was doing a collaboration with Urban Upholstery. Urban Upholstery take furniture that's being dumped or left in skips, and they take it out, they strip it down and they rebuild it and make it into something completely new. And the collaboration is using Ella's fabric, and they're doing that this week for London Design Festival. If you're listening to this now as the episode goes live, they are still going to be there till the 23rd of September, so till Sunday, so you've got time to get down there. They're running workshops, so it's well worth popping down. It's part of Shoreditch Design Triangle. There is so much to see. Look out for those little green triangles and you can pop in and check out what's going on. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Inside Stylists Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. I always get all gushy, I really should control that. Someone who I've been aware of for a while, everyone will have heard of you. I have textile and homeware designer Ella Doran. Thank you for joining. Well, I'm saying thank you for letting me come.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm coming to find me here.
Yes, I got lost. This is a current theme of me going to the wrong place for the podcast, so thank you for your time. You are very busy at the moment because we are literally at a show that you're about to open tomorrow, so crazy time, so thank you. But we're going to kind of talk about how you got started in design, because when my earliest, if I say Ella Doran, I think of bicycle wheels and old cameras and things like that. Right, so I know you really for like your photographic sort of things. So how did you get into design?
It's a really good question, and it's so great to hear you say that, because some people will remember even before that pebbles on placemats and things, which was in the very late 90s, which is really what pioneered and speared me on, really. I studied textiles at college. And
where did you study?
So I studied at Middlesex, which was still a college at the time, not a university. And it was at Cat Hill, brilliant place, fantastic group of designers, still some of them who I'm still friends and are leading in their fields also. And what was great about the course was we were taught to be our own artists, really. It was a very arty course in that it was about process and about what you were about.
Yeah.
So as well as understanding print repeats and how to design for essentially fashion more than interiors. But I knew from the very beginning, from my own childhood, that I was into interiors, into spaces.
So what happened when you were a child? What did you do? Did you dress your room?
Yeah, I always dressed my room. I would always move it around, and wherever my bed was, I would always look up and always kind of imagine, I wonder what this room would be like even upside down. So I'd sort of, in my head, I would be on the ceiling sometimes. And that led me to constantly move around to try out different... I was very aware of different feelings in different parts of the room as well, different spaces. So I enjoyed painting my room. I loved to put up magazine cuttings, drawings, words.
How old were you when you did? I did that.
Yeah,
how old were you
I think most girls probably did do
Creatives,
that. Yeah. So I think I did it from the dot, but really memorable time was from around the age of 8 to onwards.
I was young.
Yeah, I was young,
very young,
definitely young.
Very into the
and at the age
side.
of 10, I went to live in a commune with my mum, and we did. I shouldn't just say but we did, and that was very creative. There was potters there, architects, and it was a big old Georgian house that we all had to do up slowly. So it meant we all worked together in rooms, and that was a really creative time. Yeah, I got very into my drawing, also understanding graphics. So it was quite a surprise that I went off to textiles, because I thought I was very into graphics, words, bold writing. And I think that does still show in the way I approach my textile design.
So did you study photography?
No. So the reality is I'm not a trained photographer, but what was interesting was pre-digital, which is when I trained, I would always use my camera for inspiration. So I would go out walking, take pictures of the countryside. My father lived in Leeds at the time, and when I visited it was holidays, winter or summer, and we'd go off to the Dales. So that was inspiring. And then living in Bristol at the time, before I moved back to London, I would take photos of the city. And so there was a real urban and country feel. And I think how I kind of pursued that at college was through abstraction, because I couldn't use my literal photographs. So I'd get inspired by them through mark making. And what was interesting was then once I graduated, a lot of my friends did immediately set up Crafts Council grants, and I was fortunate from the degree show to meet a lot of people, all from being present. So any budding designers there, or new people who are about to exhibit their work, be with your work, because it's who you meet with your work that really does lead you on to your next thing. And I got a commission for design collaboration on dancing costumes for an amazing ballet, and then went off to live in Kenya for 6 months. So yeah, I then took it into different directions.
Yeah. So how did you come from having your photographs as your inspiration to putting them onto products? Tell me how you got into being Ella Doran, the business.
Good question. So number one, had no business training. Coming out of a printed textiles course, you do not do business. They don't teach you anything about business. They just say be creative. Yeah. So I did love commerce though. I loved making things and selling them. That was another thing I did from childhood, even little bits at various craft fairs and things. But in terms of how did I get into the photography, I stumbled across a process which was back then pretty basic. I was running through a broker, and that was to apply my photographs to table mats. Now Snappy Snaps are doing that, the world is doing that. But back then it was still pretty in the back quarters. And I had come back from Kenya with these amazing images that were for inspiration, but I knew they were designs in their own right. So that's what I played with. And I also played with pebbles on some black and white imagery of mine. And on launching them at Top Drawer, they were a total hit. And Top Drawer, again, was a bit of a whim. It was someone saying, you should try this, because if you want to sell these, that's where you'll sell them. So I got a Prince's Trust loan, not a grant. And even that process was good for me, actually, to write a business plan, because you don't borrow money without a business plan. And also with the Prince's Trust, I got a not a sponsor, but like
a mentor.
Yeah, mentor.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant. He was a lawyer. I think he still is down on Clerkenwell. And he really helped me sharpen my act and understand the whole thing. So if this is what it's going to cost, what are you going to sell it, and where's your profit? And I had to learn about VAT and shipping. So there's a massive learning curve on just having tested a little product that took off. And that's how I got established. I think one of the classic press strap lines was something like, Ella Doran, you may know her name, but you won't know the product, or something like that. It was, I can't remember exactly how it went, but press definitely pushed me on. And I think by the second or third Top Drawer, I started making a good business. Because initially it was like a few orders, and how that was going to make that work. I was still working in a bar and juggling. And so, I built it from there. Built up from table mats. My second product was trays. And a story I tell now, because back then I was ignorantly blissful and happy and didn't get scared by things. That's not to say I get scared now, but I'm definitely more aware and therefore cautious in a different way. It's really interesting.
I think if you are on, because this podcast sits on a website, and the website's been very much, like you're saying, very much a journey. And I've just got a mentor, actually. It's amazing what someone who has business sense that you have no idea of that world is massively helpful. But you overcome something that you thought was really scary, and once you've overcome it, you think, well, next time something comes up, it will probably be scary, but I know I can do it because I've already done something. It's that kind of moving on all the time.
Absolutely. And so where were we on where I was telling the story? So trays, this is the one. The trays is interesting because the company I met was at another trade show I'd gone to visit in Germany, Frankfurt, which opened my eyes to product at that time. I was blown away by how, as I was beginning to see my imagery could be applied to things, the world opened up. And in Germany at the show, which is called Ambiente and Tendons, was where I met many manufacturers. And I also got my first licensing deal there. But the manufacturer I approached was for trays. They were an Italian company. And they kind of laughed at me because I did look so young, and how are you going to manage that sort of thing? But they said the minimum's 3,000 of one design. I know.
Oh my God.
And I was like, great, I can do that.
No worries.
It took me about 2.5 years, maybe 3. But the beautiful thing was that I had the energy and drive. And B, it was a massive steep learning curve, but I needed that. It was kind of the energy drew that and threw it and took it. And so shipping in from Italy was a big deal, storing them, warehousing, sending out. But it helped grow what I was doing. And that's how it then developed. And I think Heels took the trays and the mats on at that time, which again spurred it on.
Yeah.
And so it was
gets your name out.
It gets your name out, and it helps sell the product also.
So what was on those first trays?
So the first iconic one was the pebbles in a line on a white tray. And a funny side joke here is that I live in Hackney, and some of my local friends, through my kids' parents, in fact, essentially, one family had a tray from way back, and in all this snow that we've been having, the tray got used as a bit of a toboggan stroke slide. Yeah, didn't quite cope with it. I said, well, you just smashed that one, you're not going to be able to get another one.
That's probably collectible.
Yeah, I think they were a little bit aware of the collectability of it, but hey, should have lasted longer than their life. But anyway, yeah.
That's really interesting that you kind of took on that. 3,000 is a phenomenal amount.
It's a huge amount, so that's my point.
So
now I would not even go into that unless I had a retailer. So I work with Tate Enterprises for their Tate Modern and their Tates all over. Yeah. And that I can deal with that quantity, and they can. So it's all about, for me, it has always been about the client, the customer, and understanding that there is a need for it, and therefore make it work. And at the time when I was younger, it was like, well, we're going to make this happen.
Did you have them all come over and then have to store them?
Not straight away. So the one thing was I had to, this is another difference with technology, is I think the process will have advanced by now, but back then it was litho printing, and that was the absolute minimum you could do to make it worthwhile financially. So I would buy the decals, invest in that, and then I called them off in 3 shipments, 1,000 at a time.
Yeah, so you had to store 1,000.
Yeah, I did have to store 1,000.
I can just imagine.
That was fun.
So some of the things in your imagery are things like I said, the bikes and things. Is it Bikes of Hackney?
We're
in Hackney.
Yes.
And things like vintage cameras, and then you've got peeling paint. I'm a big fan of peeling.
Yeah,
paint,
that's
corrugated.
Yeah.
Is this are these things that you love, or is it just things you see and you go, that would make a fantastic decal?
I think it's all about the world around me, and I love pattern. I love making pattern. So for me, it's a really good question, and these things I love. I engage with my everyday. I think I'm also drawn by what is of the moment or what grabs me, and I often find you can think of something and then the zeitgeist builds up and you're seeing it everywhere. But bikes, we all have a bike, whether we ride them or not is another thing, but in Hackney it's a big deal. Yes. Everyone's cycling.
Yeah.
And over a year, some years ago, I was just always photographing, thinking, oh, that's a lovely colour, or that's a nice seat, or that. And so I began to collect a lot of people's bicycles, not with the person though, locked up bikes. And so I thought, I'm going to make a pattern, a textile pattern, kind of Scandi inspired, but that's going to be the driver of a collection. So what I've tended to do now since launching my homewares, so what I didn't say is that post the early years, I got heavily into licensing, because after all this big volumes, it did get a bit much. For me, I just had my second child. I was selling in Europe, a bit in Australia and America, but I was hitting a few issues where I didn't have eyes behind the back of my head, and I needed lawyers a lot, and it was all about my distribution and also who I was working with production-wise. So licensing was a fantastic breath for me to take stock on being a designer, which I am by it foremost, and be with my kids, not so much because I then took on other jobs, but I did. It just meant it was more manageable. Yeah. When I've then reintroduced my homewares since 2011 actually, so it's already 7 years, I started developing the wallpapers, but starting to develop stories. So Bikes of Hackney is a story. And I would do that through a wallpaper, but I'm not so into just the same repeat on everything. It's very much about drawing out things. So my cushions, for instance, just focus on the bicycle wheel. Yeah. The coasters similarly. The mats that we're currently out of stock, and I don't know if I'm going to reintroduce them actually. I kind of like the idea that's gone and we'll move on to something else. But the placemats, there were 6 to a pack. And in fact, someone came in here yesterday just saying, "Are you Ella Doran?" He said, "I've got your placemats in Australia," or was given them in Australia. Wow. Yeah, they was taken out to him. But yeah, it's nice to hear that they travel. And I guess for the homeware side of my business, I want to bring joy and a bit of happiness to the table or to the interior.
Yeah, it makes you smile. Especially things like the wheels.
I think that's my aim is to have bring a smile for sure.
So was wallpaper and fabrics always on the cards? Was
Totally.
it something you always wanted to do?
So you asked something about was there a mistake or something, but my business plan with the Princess Trust was wallpapers and fabrics.
Really? Back in the very beginning?
Yeah, and what took off was the table mats.
Yeah.
And just kept me busy.
Yeah.
So I didn't really ever get to fully develop. And also, fabric and wallpaper is a big business to really drive.
Yeah.
Now, with digital technology, you can test drive it. But if you want to be really serious, you've got to invest in different ways. So I'm at the beginning of that, really. I see myself as, yes, I have a good few years behind me of wallpaper experience, but I really think in the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot more in that front as I develop. Yeah.
Well, my next question is, because you design so many different things from coasters and trays and fabrics and stuff, what's your favourite thing to design?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think for me, it is actually about the imagery and then what I might apply it on. But because in my head I'm going fabrics and wallpaper, focus on that and let the other things roll as they do. I guess wallpaper's the most fun at this point because often that's what I'm thinking in and then we can translate it to a textile. And it's very much still from the camera that it starts. I have recently done a collection with the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which was so much fun because it also engaged with my mark making again. So I played with the camera as well as my paintbrush. But the point being, I would say wallpaper at this time is where I have fun. And I very much engage with good old Photoshop and the computer for that. Yeah.
I've got an Ella Doran wallpaper story.
Oh,
which
go
is going to
for
sound
it.
a little bit fangirl, but
Go
I've got
for
some
it.
anyway. So I love peeling paint and gnarly wood and stuff like that. And I was it must have been 100% design. And we were queuing up to get into the press area in the Indigo Lounge.
Yes.
And your wallpaper, the
peeling paint.
The skateboard, is it skateboard?
As your skate.
Yeah, so it's
remembered.
kind of like pink and blue.
Yes,
so
it
it's
is.
all kind of,
I've got it in next door.
It's like scratched
Yes,
lines.
it is scratched.
And it's exactly the kind of thing I like. And I walked up to it and went, and I started stroking the wall. And my friend was like, yeah. I said, is this the Ella Doran? Because I think I'd had a press release about it like days earlier. And then I turned up and went, oh my God, it's massive.
Yes.
It was really impactful.
Oh, that's so
but
great.
you could see it from far away.
Yeah.
And also, it wasn't hung vertically, it was hung
Horizontally. Yeah,
and
that's
that
what
was
I wanted.
Completely different. It looked really
I'm glad you like
really
that.
good. And that's what I think of when I think of you, actually.
Great.
The whole, pink and blue together is just beautiful.
Colour, space. I think what I've loved about the wallpaper exploration for me has been about thinking large scale. And it does mean, that might not be so fair to the people with the small spaces, but I think also my papers are quite intense, so one wall is all you need to make an impact. But I'm really glad you like that. As a skate, I love it. Sometimes, one can say, oh, is that too simple or too plain? And I actually think for me, less is more. And it is about the simplicity, but marrying it in a way that, has
and
strength.
Scale, like you said, it's a big scale, so it's kind of larger. We're obviously not in your home, but how would you describe your interior style? What's your favourite room?
I think my kitchen open space is my favourite, not least because my boys can be around and family, friends, eating. Really got all the more into cooking in the last few years. I've always loved to cook, but funnily enough, my boys in the last few years have said, Mum, you're quite a good cook.
It's like surprise.
It's just coming along now. Whereas, so I do really enjoy that. My partner loves cooking too, so we have great fun with that. So I would say the main room, and actually in our space, I've actually wallpapered the doors, not the walls, because the walls are very high ceilings.
The doors of the cupboards or the doors
of the main doors,
Wow.
in and out, and then the odd little alcove, but not the whole space because it's got big old school windows, big blinds with pattern on. You need the white as well.
Yeah, so you need just little hints every now and again. Yeah, I like it. So, what's the highlight of your career so far?
So you asked me that question.
You can skip that one.
Well, I like it.
Too many.
I think it's a good question. Highlights. These are important, actually. One big one was a project with purpose, which came to me, so I didn't go out to seek it. And that was an invitation to pitch to design the curtains for the Royal London Hospital for Children.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
And that's down at Whitechapel.
Yeah.
It's apparently the tallest hospital in Europe.
Does that mean longest windows?
Yeah, well,
biggest
actually,
curtains?
weirdly, it's like they don't even open their windows, so it's airless. Not airless, but it's all air con. But the space for the children is amazing. They do have amazing views. But my project, what was great was in the interview, I actually had some of the sick children from there. And then when I got the job, it was very much about doing workshops and engaging with the sick kids, which was hard at times for them and for me.
Sure, yeah.
But so rewarding. And also for me, from my background of understanding production, understanding process, I was really able to help the hospital and Vital Arts who'd commissioned me to ensure that we delivered a good job, also in budget, and where they kept saying, oh no, we can't do that, I said, no, you can, and we can do it like this.
We can make it work.
Yeah, and we can do it this way. So that was a really rewarding role.
I can imagine. Yeah. What would you absolutely love to design if there were no holds barred, no price limits, no constraints whatsoever?
Well, now again, that's a lovely thought.
Can you just design whatever you want?
Well, I do actually. I do lead a very free, in the sense of I've always had my own company since leaving college, other than the odd bar job, as I mentioned. I have collaborated with a lot of companies, from John Lewis to Tate to the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, a lot of fantastic people. So I guess the freedom does feel that, but I've been thinking about that question and thinking, I think the outdoor space is really interesting, and we're seeing a lot more of decorating of exterior buildings, and I've always wondered, how would I do that? Because, there are wrappings of buildings going on and things, so that would be quite incredible to see a pattern taken into that scale and way. I would rather love that.
But I'd like
side of a building. Yeah, I would be very keen on that. It would need to be sustainable and not just
because you were very early on in the sustainability of design. Yeah, because you've had quite a lot of input into that. Haven't you?
Well, I got very involved with the Royal Society of Arts because I'm a fellow of the arts, and they have run a programme called the Great Recovery Project, and working on that really helped me engage all the more with understanding what's happening to our linear process and how we need to communicate more about the circular. So from our industrial backgrounds as a country, we've just had this idea of design, make, and then when you don't want something, you throw it away. Those in design discerning obviously know when you've got something that's of value, but we've in many ways lost touch with what is valued. And I guess that's what I now feel as a textile designer or a designer with a voice. I'd like to really promote that, and for us all to think a bit more about what we use, how we use it, what the message is. And one thing that came up out of this whole process was furniture, for instance, is meant to have a tag that tells you the label, the fire label, how it protects it. Very often we cut those off because they're not very attractive. That in itself already is being redesigned, but it needs to be law. It shouldn't be like an IKEA long one, we just cut it off and forget about it. If we kept a history tag of what the materials are, then they can carry on in their lives. And also we need to design for longevity. We need to think of quality from the start. So I'm really wanting to promote that all the more. Design, engage and understand.
It's very, I don't know how old your boys are. My girls are 12 and 14, and they've been brought up in a very different world to the world I was brought up in. And we were brought up to fix things. And not make, do, amend. But not that old. But actually there is an element of, I'm always saying to my kids, everything's fixable. You can fix everything. But more in a, I don't want to do landfill, and every time we put the bins out, I'm like, oh, there's so much.
Same here.
But and it's quite interesting that they are very eco-conscious. Like, I think I've mentioned it before on the podcast, where when I go around with 2 bins, one for rubbish and one for recycling in their bedrooms, my daughter will pull off the plastic wrappers from her bottles.
Go, girl.
Because but she'll still buy things and then let them move on. So it's like
well,
it's
letting
them
move on is okay. So again, this is other thing. We've got to understand that there is a world of recycling, and I think what's really exciting about now is that designers are engaging with different materials and with waste materials in really fascinating ways. There's a friend of mine, Sital Solanki's just released a book called Material Matters, and she kind of focuses or showcases, I should say, a lot of very interesting design work. And that for me has been exciting. I've come across a lot of designers through the Royal College and various engagements that are making solid wool, which uses a wool and a resin, for instance, and then fascinating things out of coconut, and we're seeing denim and textiles.
Wow.
Also, what really is about to happen in a big way is the fashion textiles. Yeah. And we're going to get new fibres that are from the recycled fibre.
Yeah, well, do you know, because I'm actually writing a blog post at the moment about eco.
Yeah.
And I was sent a duvet. Yeah. And I've been testing it this week.
Yeah.
And it's made from plastic bottles.
Oh, I love it.
And it is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, the cotton fabric that's obviously not cotton. Yeah. It's so soft, it's like silk, and the insides are all fluffy, and it's just, it feels so luxurious that why would you not?
So here's the hashtag,
that?
Everyone, let's make plastic guiltless. Now that's been driven by actually an Italian woman, but the whole thing is we can work with good plastics. Plastics have transformed our life. What the problem has been is we've been using either the wrong plastics or haven't had the facility to be able to recycle and work with them. So one of my designs, again, I've got next door, I've collaborated with Sophie Thomas, who's big on sustainability and has headed up the Great Recovery Project. And she's been on a mission collecting ocean plastic from the shorelines across the world. She was out in Hawaii doing the same. And so we've collaborated, because I'm such a visual print designer. We got together and I photographed all this plastic, some of her plastic, I should add. And I've made a kind of camo print out of it, and we've called it Clean Up Camo.
Fantastic.
So that's what we're going to use tomorrow to reupholster the chair here.
Very cool.
Live.
Very cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about tomorrow?
Yeah, I do. So we're down here in the Hackney Road, right in the depths of Hackney, very near Shoreditch. And during this festival week, tomorrow is what's been dubbed the late night for Shoreditch. So there'll be a lot of designers and shops, retailers opening up for the local community and visitors from afar and wide to come and visit. In fact, we've had lots of people from abroad this weekend. And tomorrow, Andrea from Urban Upholstery will be upholstering this one chair that I don't know if he found it on the street or whether he was handed it. He's built his business on furniture from the street.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. The ultimate in recycling.
Yeah, ultimate, exactly. And they're craftsmen, real craftsmen. Beautiful, beautiful work. So we've got some school kids coming in. We've also got a lot of people signed up for Eventbrite, I think, to come and watch. And he's going to literally be showing you from springs all the way through to the horsehair. Wow. What we're going to be using, we'll be using some recycled wool for the base. And we'll be building this chair. I will think it will take more than tomorrow.
I was going to
say,
do it
on Thursday.
What a big job.
No, it's a bit ambitious, especially when you're talking. But the idea is it will be finished by the end of the week.
Right, so you're going to do a little bit each day. Yeah. So you're here all week.
Yeah.
You've got lots of your wallpapers.
I have.
Show,
I've got a whole display of my wallpaper. Yeah.
So anyone who's around should come down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just thinking this is going to go out on Friday.
Well, it's still got the weekend.
I will share it ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
So you were talking about collaborations. You've done quite a few, but if you could collaborate with anyone, past or present, who would be your dream partner?
Yeah.
And what would you make?
Yeah. So I like this question because there's so many friends and goodness knows who peeps, but because I mentioned earlier wallpaper and fabric is a bit of a focus, I feel like I've gone through a bit of a circle of not back to where I am back to where I started this business plan. And my inspiration from the days of selling my collection, I'd go to Paris with my then agent, Jenny Freen, who's still doing her business. And we would sell our text designs from folio. And if I was lucky, I'd sell mine. And I sold once to Paloma Picasso, which was so exciting.
Incredible.
We met her incognito in a hotel, so she had to be
big
all...
shades.
Yeah, big shades, headscarf. And she bought one of my designs, so that was very, touching. But Pierre Frey is actually someone I'd laud up because they're a fantastic family-run business that is now, I think, second. It might even be onto their third generation. But I love their style, their quality, and there is something about the heritage. But they're also they seem open, and particularly to the now as well. So that's some of their fabrics are just exquisite. Yeah. The recent collection I saw at Design Week, I was like, I'd so love to do a collection. And I think that's what I'd love to indulge in, is the idea, a bit like I was saying about product, where I have one design and then you've got coordinates of product. Whereas I'd love to think like that across fabrics.
Yeah.
But the collaboration would be the thing.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I like that. kind of I don't know if this is a business or a creative question, but what's the biggest mistake you've ever made?
Yeah, that's hard.
It's really hard. I was thinking what my biggest mistake was.
Yeah, go on. What was
my?
Yeah, tell me.
My biggest mistake was I think I hired some guys. So this website was built and then didn't work, and I had to rebuild it from scratch, and I lost all my money. And in my heart of hearts, when I took them on, I was advised to find people and check their ratings and look at their stuff. But deep down, I knew it wasn't right. They wouldn't have been my choice. I felt in my gut that they weren't 100% the right people.
Right.
And
you didn't go with your gut.
And I didn't go with my gut.
Oh, that's interesting.
I always go with my gut.
Yeah.
Now, always. If I have a bad feeling, I feel I have this sixth sense.
Yeah.
Usually it's if people lose things, if I don't get this feeling, they'll find it.
Yeah.
And I've never been wrong yet. But it's like that. It's
yeah.
that, do you feel it? And I didn't feel it, and I went with it anyway.
So
and then when this next guy, so the guy who's done it now, who I call Lovely Larry from Pixel Perfect Web, he was in a group we were, like a coaching group we were in, and he was in Canada, and I was like, I'm not going abroad anymore, I'm going to find someone in London. And Larry said, do you want me to have a quick look at your site? I'll just tell you what I think. And he was so amazing. I was like, no, actually, I'm so going with him, and it was the right decision.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So there's kind of
I like that.
a long-winded journey.
I like that. I think in terms of biggest mistake, I'm so good at turning a mistake into a positive. It's just it's just the way I am. So one thing I'd cite as a producer in the early days, particularly, was learning the hard way. I did learn the hard way with everything. And one big deal was with production of ceramics at the time. I was making porcelain and I was shipping it in from Bangladesh. And I didn't have confidentiality agreements. Oh. And I'd already learnt that from a previous thing. This is my point. It's like I'd already understood that I should communicate that way. But
what does that mean? Telling people they mustn't say what you're doing so
no,
they can
not
copy?
to say. It means effectively when they're a producer, you're telling them, if you've got any seconds, you tell me. We deal with them. If you've got anyone who approaches you, you tell me. If this is my product, you're producing it. So in a way, confidentiality agreement with a producer is laying out what their role is and what your role is. Right. And I guess I just didn't do it legally correctly. And at the time I was with Acid, anti-copying and design. So there was just so many silly things of why didn't I do that? Yeah. But long story short, they sold behind my back. And it was instantly then told to me by my agent in Paris. She rang me up saying, Ella, you've sold to Galerie Lafayette. Why didn't you tell me? It's like, because I didn't know. Oh, my goodness. But so long story short, we didn't remain in business together. And they did promise through legal route that they had, much to my pain, smashed every single plate, because that was the solution. We couldn't find another. And that was a big, don't like that. But interestingly, on the back of that, I then
never had
that problem, and I then started working with Portmeirion, who under license. So that really opened up a different door for me.
See, one door closes, another door opens every time. Yeah. You obviously have a lot of interior products. You have fabrics, you have wallpapers, you have coasters and trays and all sorts. I think people listening are going to want to get in touch with you, and stylists and writers are going to want to feature your product. So I think we were talking, you've got a press officer called Milda.
Yes.
If I'm just going to share her details now. If anyone wants to get in touch with Milda, it's Milda, so Milda at elladoran.co.uk. And you can drop Milda a line and find out about products and images.
Ask us anything.
I should also share your Instagram in fact, I should share everything in one place. So you're elladoran.co.uk, which is a really easy website to remember. No need to go to the show notes for that.
That's all.
And then you've got two Instagram accounts, which I know personally how hard that is to manage. You've got Ella Doran Designer and you've got Ella Doran Homewares.
Yes.
So you can see all the products on the homewares.
That's
and you
correct.
can see all the inspiration on the designer.
That's absolutely right. And actually, I have just launched my designer website as well, so it is cool. I'm just kind of wanting to not separate, but just show that there are two aspects to the way this big company is being driven, really. And so the designer website, which is elladorandesigner.co.uk, will show you previous projects, a lot of collaborative work that I've done, or a lot of work under commission. And I'm very open to commissions and collaborations, so yeah, do get in touch.
You never know what's around the corner, do you? You never know who's listening. You never know what's around the corner. So this week, as we said, it's a very busy week. You're at 100% Design. You were telling me about the Barbara Chandler, how it came to be.
So dear
that's
Barbara,
really interesting. Dear
Barbara. She has approached 7 established designers. I can name 3, or myself, Michael Marriott, Chris Eckersley, Paul Watts, I think. There's various people, but we've all then put forward someone that we think is the next one to watch. And I've put forward a brilliant girl, very talented lady called Kyla McCullum, who runs a company called Foldability. And she is very much into folding fabric, papers, all sorts. But where you need to look her up, but she's going to be doing something very striking at 100% Design, cool. which opens on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I think why I was grabbed by her when I saw her at Design Junction about 4 or 5 years ago. 5 years ago now. And I just recently launched my Geo design, which I'll show you next door in a bit. Barbara Chandler had given me 2 awards, actually 1 award at an Evening Standard. No, it wasn't Evening Standard, sorry, it was Grand Designs. So I won 2 awards in one night, all for this Geo wallpaper, which I guess that's been another thing about the wallpapers, they have a very 3D effect. That's a lot to do with the camera, but it's also a lot to do with the way my mind works of wanting to have depth to something. So it's quite interesting. Anyway, back to 100% Design. She's got the whole front area and celebrating, I think, designers old and new. So it's definitely going to be a great feature to visit.
Yeah, fantastic. Check that out.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. It's very exciting. It must have been quite difficult to choose one person because you come across quite a lot of
it's really hard.
Time.
It's really hard. I think it's all down to that the right moment at the right time and thinking, oh, that could work for them. So yeah, I think Kyla's again very inspiring, as I've said, but she's now running more experiences in terms of people coming to engage and make things with her.
I went to the RA for the summer exhibition, and there was a piece there that was, I can't remember it looked like paper, but it was actually plastic, and it had been folded, but in a way that you couldn't imagine how they physically fold it without it, because it wasn't even, and it was mesmerising.
Oh, how
so
brilliant!
I'm wondering if hers is similar. I'm going to check it out. I will link through it in the show notes so everyone can see what's happening and find it.
Yeah.
So really, my last question is, what's next?
Oh, that's such a good question, isn't it? What's round the corner? Well, what's next for me to know and you to find out? The next big project, I've got 2 things that are really exciting. I'm off to Saudi Arabia with the British Council.
Have you done a lot of travelling with work then? Because you mentioned Kenya at the beginning.
Yeah, I did actually. Travel's definitely an inspiration for me.
Very cool.
I do probably often take my best photographs when I'm not working so much.
Because you're a bit more relaxed.
Yeah, I think so. It's also light and being outdoors and capturing that moment. But Saudi is with British Council, and it's all around cultural exchange but sustainability, so it feels that's exciting. And then this is an exciting project I'm working on with the Yorkshire Sculpture Park. So next June you're going to be invited to come up and visit my show, which is, I've called it From Sheep to Seat, and I'm basically going to tell you a story through product and an immersive space, celebrating the wool that's on the sheep that graze on the land and all that I can make from that wool.
Wow.
So, and one of the pieces is going to be a chair that I've collaborated with another furniture friend, Julian Mayer, and we're using wood from the park as well. So it's going to be a real story, sustainable
love that
thing. And I'm very excited.
I was going to say, that sounds very exciting, because that is, even just saying wood and wool.
Yeah, wood and wool.
The
exactly.
options are endless, aren't they?
I know. But and it's that whole thing of now, okay, so we've got the remit, I know what I'm creating. So there will be a mixture of my photography displayed in quite beautiful ways onto wood and also onto light boxes and all sorts. But then the textile, I've collaborated with Chimera, who are furniture, not furniture, they're weavers.
Yeah.
Global weavers, but they make amazing textiles actually. They're also on the sustainability front. And then Alternative Flooring, who will be at Decorex this week. But they'll launch my runner and hopefully carpet by next spring.
Fantastic.
And that's again that's kind of interpreting my mark making from the Yorkshire Sculpture Park. So exciting.
Very good. It all kind of intertwines.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Thank you very much for your time, because I know
pleasure.
it was a very busy time for you, so I really appreciate
Thank you so much,
taking
Emma.
the time
That's
to
great.
chat with me, especially as I was late again.
No problem. Suited me.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylist podcast. You'll find all the details from today's episode over on insidestylist.com/Ella Doran. You'll also find out about that collaboration I was talking about at the beginning. All the details are on the show notes. Until next time, bye for now.